Okay, let us
Hare
start with our
Krishna,
prayers.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, let's start with our prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Umagyan Jnananjanachalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णाय राधानाथ स्वामी नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे तम करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्पादमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुनितारणं परमानंद माधवम श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम। Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. So before I start, I just want to welcome His Grace Rasamrit Prabhu. Rasamrit Prabhu is one of my very dear god brothers from originally from Mumbai, who is now based in the Middle East, actively preaching there for many years. A very good speaker and taking care of so many devotees there. So he just called me and we were about to have a conversation, and I told him I'm just about to do some Harikatha. So he decided to join us for for the class. So Samrit Prabhu, welcome to you for coming and honoring us by your presence.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for allowing me to join the Sangha. Thank you.
No, there is no allowance. There is maybe you can speak. You can speak maybe something later as we progress to the conversation. Haribol. Thank you. So we are all of the same age. We grew up together in Krishna consciousness in Radha Gopinath Temple, Chopati. Of course, now we are situated in different parts of the world. So Prabhu is doing wonderful service in the Middle East. Prabhu, which place particularly, where specifically you are at?
I'm in Abu Dhabi. It is known as Avtari Desh.
Haribo. So Prabhu has descended from Bombay to Abu Dhabi, so he's also taken avatar there. He's performing his pastime. Thank you, Prabhu. So thank you, Rasamrit Prabhu. So welcome everybody else also. So my intention today for our discussion is we are continuing in the fourth canto, discussion of the descendants of Srila Dhruva Maharaj. We had begun the discussion of King Anga. We discussed in the 13th chapter the last time. And we concluded the 13th chapter with respect to how Anga Maharaj, even though so pious, so extraordinary, because of having a most notorious, sinful, mischievous son by the name Vena, he actually left home suddenly. And when this was narrated, the listeners become very curious. What is it? Why? What happened? How come Vena became like this? Typically, this is not what is done. And not only did they mention about Anga leaving to the forest, they also mentioned that King Vena was killed by the Brahmanas. It was like, wow, this is, an extraordinary story. An extraordinary story. And of course, because it is related to the Lord's devotees, it is very purifying. So they wanted to hear. Vidura was very keen to hear from Maitreya about more details. So the 14th chapter essentially summarizes the story of King Vena. Now this is very interesting. And this is story of King Vena is leading us to the story of Prithu Maharaj, who's an empowered incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God. So it's going there. But this episode of Vena is very interesting. A brief recap about Vena's birth. It is said that the Bhagavatam mentions that Sunita, the wife of Anga, because she was the daughter of Mrityu, she had certain samskaras because of her maternal, of her own family background. So even though she combined with Anga, interestingly, while normally Anga would have expected a saintly child because it was a dynasty of Dhruva Maharaj, but somehow this child turned out to be very notorious. And also the influence of Mrityu, the Lord of Death. So this also indicates a very interesting lesson that for the development of a child, the scriptures compare the birth of a child somewhat similar to the growth of a plant. In the sense that there is a seed and there is a soil. So for a nice plant to grow, both are important. A good quality seed and also a fertile soil. If either of them have a problem, then there is a problem in the growth of the plant. Of course, generally the scripture says the seed is more important, but yes, the soil is also very important. And third, not only is the seed and soil important, but also taking care of the sapling as it is growing, as it is sprouting and growing until it actually becomes a strong, sturdy tree. The gardener has to take care of the plant, protect it, nourish it nicely. That is also very important. So in this case, even though the seed was that of Anga, the father is the seed giver and the mother is like the soil, because the soil receives the seed and the seed sprouts in the soil, in the sense that that body grows in the womb of the mother. So both because of the nature of the soil, in this case, the daughter of Mrityu Sunita, as well as the influence of the maternal side on this boy Vena, he grew up to be a terribly cruel person. And we discussed this in our last class, how even when he would fight with his friends, he would go to the extreme of not just, quarreling verbally or giving foul language. He would actually go to the point of killing the friends that he disagreed with. He was notorious to the extreme, and King Anga tried all ways to discipline him. He spoke to him, he chastised him, he tried to punish him, but nothing works. So he was kind of a hopeless case. And Anga, at one point in time, we discussed how he reflected very deeply on all this situation. And then eventually he said to himself that enough is enough. It is probably an indication to me that I must. What is the use of this kind of a household life? So household life is successful, is considered successful when both husband and wife are able to practice dharma properly, lead a happy, materially and spiritually prosperous life, and also give birth and raise Krishna conscious children. Prabhupada would always emphasize this point that is very important for especially Krishna conscious Grihastha devotees to raise Krishna conscious children. This is a very, very wonderful service, very important service. And we see most of those who are great acharyas are those who have been born in the families of extraordinary devotees. Prabhupada gives credit to his father. Siddhanta Saraswati is born to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. See, so many of these acharyas are born in very extraordinary families because the kind of samskaras that are made since very childhood, or not even childhood, even from the womb, to these personalities are so extraordinary that they grow up to become such empowered pure souls. So anyway, in this case, it wasn't quite how it should be ideally. And King Anga practically disappeared. The residents of the state tried to look for the king, but no matter how hard they tried to look for him, they couldn't find him. So it was quite a difficult situation. And also, like what we discussed, up until this point, it wasn't a very common thing. A very organized government wasn't common at that particular time in history. But nonetheless, a king, a ruler was still very important because when there is a strong ruler for the kingdom, then proper law and order is established, and then the common people can have a peaceful, civilized life focused on earning both material and spiritual wealth and ultimately become progressive towards the real goal of life. So in this case, the whole kingdom was rendered kingless, leaderless, governmentless. Now, what do you expect will happen when a kingdom doesn't have any leader? Now, this is one thing which is very important. If you see, even up to today, it's very important that between two governments, the space should be as little as possible. Because if there is no government, then one doesn't know who is the decision maker if anything big were to happen. So it's actually a very dangerous situation, even for a small country to have a period where there is no one in charge. And here, this was not just a small kingdom, this was practically the planet and perhaps even beyond. So when the great sages who were there in that land, the head of all those great sages was Bhrigu Muni, they were always concerned not just for their own advancement, but for the welfare of the people, because that is the nature of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas want to make sure, they want to guide society, they want to ensure that everybody is happily engaged in their duties. And they contribute towards that direction by giving their guidance. and also through the execution of dharma and teaching others about the practice and execution of dharma. So when they saw that there is nobody actually, no powerful ruler, they could see that people are actually becoming whimsical. They are actually beginning to create a disturbance in society. They're becoming unregulated. The natural tendency of humankind is that unless there is a rod of punishment hanging on top of the head, the tendency of conditioned soul is to always stray. Is it not? So many people were straying from regulative principles. So when the sages saw this, they actually asked for an audience with Sunita, the queen mother. There was nobody else to talk to. And they discussed with her and said, this is a very dangerous situation. This is a very difficult situation. So we need a king. So who will be the king? They said, Vena. Vena, how can Vena be the king? The ministers were also there in that discussion. The ministers disagreed. No, Vena is an absolute. So now they were really in a plight of what to do. The Brahmanas felt that there should be some king. And a one-eyed king is better than no king. As they said, one-eyed in the sense that, yeah, this Vena is not of such a bright character, but at least there will be a king. And they couldn't find anybody else who was qualified to take on that role. So they recommended let Vena be the king. Ministers were not a good idea, not a good idea. But they couldn't give any other alternative proposal. So finally it was agreed, okay. So he just had their way and King Vena was installed as the king of the land. As soon as he became the king of the land, the news spread everywhere. The thieves and the rogues became actually very scared. They became even more scared than normal. Why they became scared? Because they knew that this king is such a rogue, he's the rogue of all rogues. So we will all be in great trouble. So, they actually hid, it is said, in various, just like rats hide from snakes by getting into holes. All the rogues and thieves, they retreated and hid. Because, sometimes what happens is, if there is a proper law and order, then, there is a proper legal machinery to dispense justice. But Vena was so cruel, they knew that if somehow they come across him in a situation of confrontation, they are going to get, for such a small thing, they will, end up being punished. And this fear was not only for the thieves, this fear was there even for the common people. That was the problem. The thieves are fearful, that is a good thing. And true enough, as soon as Vena ascended to the throne, because throne is not just about wealth. Of course, he had so much wealth at his disposal, but being the executive head of the empire, the power that comes with that kind of a position was actually so intoxicating for Vena that he became extremely proud and arrogant. So he was already notorious. On top of that, as is the famous saying in English, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power is corrupting because power has its own intoxication. We talk about intoxication of smoking, we talk about the intoxication of liquor and drugs. But everyone says, I don't know because I have never been a king, but it is said that, of course, it doesn't matter king in the sense of king, but any leader who has extraordinary control over his subjects, so whatever sort, be it a company, be it a leader of an organization. What to speak of a king who has practically full dominion over the whole kingdom. And this is not a small kingdom, practically the whole planet. He became so proud. He started considering himself greater than everyone. Everyone means he didn't bother about the Brahmins, he didn't bother about anything, he didn't bother about religious principles. He became so proud, and the first thing that happens when a person becomes very proud and puffed up, this is the great danger. The first most dangerous thing that happens when a person becomes very proud and puffed up is one starts insulting and offending great souls. The scriptures are very clear that when one becomes offensive to great souls, one destroys the merits of what one already has. Of course, being harsh and insulting to anyone is bad, and there will be reactions coming for that, and that is not to be done. We are not saying that it is okay to be harsh. Yes, there will be proportionate reactions. But when you offend and insult great souls, Mahatmas, the reaction is manifold, many times more. Correct? If you go to your neighbor and slap your neighbor, the neighbor may slap you back. A proportionate reaction. But if you were to speak, what to speak of slap, even speak something against the chief minister of your state, don't even have to act on it. You'll immediately get arrested and put behind the bars and be whacked. You get a disproportionate reaction, because where there is extraordinary power, I'm giving a material example, there's an extraordinary reaction. So because of the extraordinary spiritual potency of great souls, even though they themselves may not directly react, the Lord ensures that one is severely punished, because the Lord says, I can tolerate everything else, but I cannot tolerate pain given to the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas. So he started to insult great personalities, and that became the beginning of his end. He was offending even the very Brahmanas who had ensured that he had become the king. This Vena, he would sit on his chariot, blinded by his opulence, and like a great master, drive throughout the kingdom on his chariot, causing the whole earth to tremble. And what he would do as he would travel around, he would make announcements everywhere. He became so proud that he started thinking that there is no one greater than me, not just on earth, but I am greater than the Devatas. No need to worship either the Devatas or the Supreme Lord. Everybody should worship me. So he forbade in his whole kingdom anybody from performing any religious activity. No yajna, no dana, no tapa. He actually had that announcement using kettle drums made in all parts of his kingdom. He stopped all kind of religious performance, and that was disastrous. The sages were shocked, because this is a very, very dangerous situation. Because yajna, dana, tapa, and all these religious observances are the means for the common people to, for all people actually, to elevate themselves. We've been discussing this topic in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, even for the most pure of pure souls, yajna, dana, and tapa should not be given up. What to speak of people in general? It is so essential for their spiritual evolution. And ultimately, material prosperity also comes from yajna. Krishna explains this in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Paraspara bhavayanta. If you perform yajna and please the Lord and his representatives, then they will provide everything that you need to have a happy life in this world. So the Brahmanas, who were very concerned about welfare, and who were themselves also forbidden. It was not just that the common people are forbidden, because the sages are the ones who are actually performing the yajnas. All these great sages actually came together. They had a conference to discuss what to do. We were hoping that this will actually improve the situation. This is going in another direction now. Rather than improving, it is creating chaos in society. He is the one who's supposed to be guiding people towards religion, is actually stopping them from being religious. And this is the problem. Even in Kali Yuga, what is the problem? The rulers are very much like Vena. Why? Because they're only interested in power. And being maddened by power, they go to the extent of criticizing, defying, undermining religious principles, true religious principles, and come up with imaginary principles and bewilder the people in general. And that is why they cause ruination of society. Krishna explained this in the Bhagavad Gita also, that this is what Varna Sankara does, unwanted population, because they are not treated, they are not properly trained in dharma. They don't have proper samskaras. They will also grow up to simply create chaos in society. So the sages could clearly see this is headed in a big disaster. So feeling very compassionate for people in general, they discussed amongst themselves, what is it that we have to do? Because it is our duty as Brahmanas to guide society, but we are not even allowed to either do sacrifices or perform sacrifices. The example is given, the sages were contemplating like this. The situation of the kingdom now is like a log of wood which is on fire from both sides, both ends. You light a fire on one side, you light a fire on the other side, and the fires are slowly approaching and consuming the whole log. And there are ants on the log in the middle. So what is happening? Where are the ants going to run? If you go this side also fire, this side also there is fire. Eventually the fire will come closer and burn the ants to ashes. So what does this comparison mean? This comparison means that on one side is the atrocities of Vena that the Brahmanas could see. On the other side were all the rogues and thieves in the kingdom. So the original plan of the Brahmins was that if Vena is there, then the rogues and thieves will be taken care of. But now they had a problem that if we eliminate Vena, then the rogues and thieves will be there. One way also, this way also problem. If you come from the other side, also it is going to be a problem. So on one side is Vena, on the other side are rogues and thieves. So how do we solve the problem for the people in general, for whom they are sandwiched between Vena on one side and rogues and thieves on the other? A very difficult situation. So after discussing, they came to the conclusion, let us try to see if we can resolve this difficult situation amicably. After all, this Vena is born out of Sunita's womb. And because of that background, he's become mischievous. Actually, he's so mischievous. Actually, to maintain a person like Vena, it's like feeding milk to a snake. It will only increase his poison. But still, we agreed to appoint him because we thought at least it will be a better situation than allowing the rogues to create havoc. But now Vena himself has become the enemy. On one side, the rogues were looting people, but here he is stopping people from doing anything spiritually progressive or religious. This is a very, very dangerous situation. He has become the enemy of all the state. But let us do like this. Let us not directly confront him because he's very proud and arrogant. Let us go and talk to him and try to see if we can gently try to put some sense into his head. So the sages thought, yes, perhaps that is a better course of action. Yes, actually, we only suggested he should be enthroned, but it didn't work out. So this is the nature of the material world. See, in the material world, oftentimes there are situations where we have to choose a lesser evil out of two evils. In practical life, choice is most of the times not between good and bad. That is very easy. Choice is oftentimes choosing one of the two goods or one of the two bads, because there isn't any other choice. When one has to properly use one's understanding of dharma and in a detached way make a choice which is the best out of the available choices. And the choice may not always be good, but it is the best of the available choices. Correct? And that is the nature of reality. And that is what the sages did. But they realized that things didn't quite go to plan. And that is the reality of the material world. Even as devotees, sometimes we make so many plans. We may have wonderful intent. We may do so many things. But ultimately, Krishna shows us that we are not the controllers. That Krishna is the controller. Things don't work. Even with all good intention, all good efforts. It is not even that even great, perfect, pure devotees, when they execute various plans, that everything works according to their plans. What to speak of ordinary people like us? Even Srila Prabhupada, many times, of course, eventually he became successful. But even across his whole journey, so many of the things that he tried did not work out the way he envisioned them. And he adjusted. Of course, you're so determined to serve the Lord in any way that just like the Ganges flows around the rocks, he circumvented various challenges and still continued to serve his Guru and Lord Chaitanya. So the sages were thinking that, yes, we must try to talk to him. And if we don't make this endeavor, then the people will also blame us because we are the ones who have appointed him. So now everybody is saying, see, sages, what you did. This is another problem of being a leader. One of the problems of being a leader is sometimes what happens is when you do something good, nobody gives you credit. But if things go bad, they will all come to you and blame you. Yes, he's the one who did it. Because for a good person, everybody wants to take ownership. For something which doesn't go well, everybody is looking for somebody to point the finger to. This is the challenge with leadership. Oftentimes people think, leadership is such a wonderful position, everything looks very glittery, but actually so much responsibility there, so much challenge. It's not an easy role of leadership in any position, material or spiritual. So they said, at least let us do our part. This is the best we can do. So let us go and speak to Vena. So the sages decided and they approached King Vena. And they spoke to Vena. And when they went in front of Vena, even though they were actually very angry and upset with Vena, fire cannot meet with fire, otherwise there will be big fire. So sages concealed their anger. They didn't show that they were angry, upset. Correct? There's another thing to learn. If somebody is upset already, and we also approach them with an upset mood, it is sure that it is going to blow up. Sometimes when we have a conflict situation, even sometimes with our close and near dear ones or at workplace or wherever, best not to engage in debate, in conversations when both are in a heated mood, or even when one of them is in a heated mood, better to let some time lapse for the mind to be peaceful, because only in a peaceful mind one can be reasonable. So very carefully the sages came in front of Vena, King Vena. They told him, "Oh, my dear king, we have come to give you some good advice. Please hear us with great attention. Telling you for your good, nothing for us to gain. Telling you for your good. Because if you follow our advice, then all good fortune will be yours. Powerful, you'll be rich, your reputation will spread everywhere." You see, oh dear King Vena, it is so important to follow religious principles, because religious principles are the basis by which a person becomes happy. So it is very important for everybody in the kingdom to follow religious principles at a mental level, verbal level, bodily level, intellectual level, because that is how one can counteract miseries and be elevated, be happy here and even hereafter, and ultimately achieve the supreme destination. So you are the king. As the king, you are supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are Naradeva. It is also known as Naradeva. You are the Lord. You are the representative of the Lord on earth. And that is how the Shastras describe a king. The king is a representative of God. Just like the spiritual master is a representative of God, the king is also a representative of God. And being a representative, it is your duty properly represent the Lord. And what does the Lord want? The Lord wants the king to properly, to ensure that the praja are properly guided and protected in terms of execution of religious principles, so that they can become happy. Because following dharmic principles is the basis of happiness, both material and spiritual. So we do not want that you do something that will actually spoil the spiritual life of the people in general. Because you see, dear king, the Shastras also say that if the public, if the praja, engages in sinful activity, you also will have to take a share. 1/6 of the bad karma comes to you. So eventually it will affect you also. Their irreligion will affect you. So this is another reason leader has to be very careful, because being a leader is not just about enjoying position. Being a leader is to be also take responsibility and accountability for what your dependents do. Srila Prabhupada would say, whoever is the head of the state takes 1/6 of the good karma and 1/6 of the bad karma of all the citizens of the state. If you are the king or the king, of course, in today's time, maybe prime minister, president, whoever. Imagine of countries which are grossly deviated from religious principles. Imagine the kind of karma that will come. People are hankering to become the leaders just because they can enjoy a little bit of power. The power is so intense. So they're trying to convince him by saying that if they fall down, you also fall down. It is in your interest, my king, that all the residents of your kingdom properly follow religious principles. It is your duty to protect them from the rogues and the thieves. And in return, the Lord allows the king, in return for that protection and in return for ensuring a dharmic, people can live a dharmic life. In return, you can collect taxes. And based on the taxes, you can definitely enjoy and have a nice life, very opulent life, no problem. But the tax should be collected only by a king who is performing this duty. What is that duty? To protect the citizens physically as well as spiritually. Physically by protecting them from rogues and thieves. Kshatriya, kshatratrayate kshatriya. Kshatriya means who protects others from getting hurt. Shata means getting hurt. So one gets hurt, one way is physical, somebody attacks. And the Kshatriya is supposed to also wield his sword and protect if somebody attacks. So that is one kind of protection from the thieves and rogues. But another kind of protection is using the sword to ensure that dharma is properly followed. There is the rule of dharma in the kingdom. That is also another kind of protection. Because if dharma is not followed, eventually everything will collapse and there will be misery everywhere. So that is the right way for a king. He should do this, protect, ensure religious principles are followed, and then collect taxes and then live. In that way, you will be glorified in this life, and after death, also you will achieve the higher planets. So you must ensure that you create and facilitate an environment where all the 8 social orders, the 4 varnas and the 4 ashrams, are encouraged to engage in religious activities properly. And the summum bonum of all religious activities is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all their occupations. Atap Pumbi Dvija Shreshta Varnashrama Vibhagasha Swanushthitasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. The ultimate objective of the execution of all duties of all varnas and all ashrams is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Haritoshan. And it is the duty of the king as the representative of the Supreme Lord to keep that vision when he is ruling as a king, to keep that vision that he is a representative, to always understand that this kingdom is owned originally by the Supreme Lord. You are just a caretaker. He is the source, and he is situated in the heart of all living entities, the super soul. So with this vision, the king is supposed to serve all living entities. And when he does this, and when in this way the Lord is worshipped properly and the Lord's representatives, the devatas, are worshipped properly according to the varnashram system, according to the proper yajnas which are needed, then the Lord will become happy, the devatas will become happy, and everything will go on wonderfully. So why are you creating a situation where you are stopping them from performing sacrifices? It is actually for your own good, because that is your correct duty. So they were trying to make him understand that what we are advising you is for your good. We are not telling because we want it. It's good for them also, but it's also good for you. So please don't stop the religious principles. Because if you stop them, you will insult the devatas, you will insult the Supreme Lord. So in that way, very nicely they explained. They explained based on Shastra, they explained the mechanics. And they were hoping that Vena will reflect on it and take the right decision. But much contrary to their expectation, the actual result was quite opposite. King Vena actually blasted out at them. He started chastising and insulting the Brahmanas. He said, you don't know anything. What nonsense you're talking. What you are saying religion is actually irreligion. I will tell you what real religion is. I'm just paraphrasing this. This is the problem, and people are very proud and in powerful positions. They don't have knowledge, but they become so puffed up in that ego that they think their understanding is topmost. And this is what happens when a person goes in the mode of ignorance. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says they consider irreligion as religion and religion as irreligion. So he started chastising the Brahmanas and the sages and saying that you are actually out of ignorance. You don't know I am the king. I should be worshipped because the Devatas and the Supreme Lord resides in me. So you should worship me like the Supreme Lord. Don't need to worship God separately. Just worship me. Forget all the yajnas. Forget worshipping all the Devatas. I am the sum total of all of them here standing in front of you. Which God are you looking for outside? I am your all in all. Without me, what are you? And why are you going after these Devatas and the Supreme Lord when I am in front of you? You are all like an unchaste wife who's looking for a paramour when the husband is straight in front of you. What nonsense is this? You are irreligious. You are sinful. He started arguing like this. Just to worship me. Why are you worshipping Vishnu? Just worship me. So when the sages saw what he is talking, I mean, it was already bad. And now not only was he doing that, he was actually criticizing and blaspheming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the sages they realized that this guy cannot be, he's beyond any talking. He's beyond any disciplining. And they all came to the conclusion. Actually, they had already planned. They decided, see, there are only two options. Then we go to talk to him. We'll try to nicely make him understand. If he doesn't understand, then he has to be finished. Because we cannot allow such a king to be continued. It will lead to ruination of the whole planet. So can you imagine how much the Brahmanas would be concerned at that point in time? They were so concerned about proper dharma being followed. And that is the sad thing today, because neither are there properly qualified Brahmins. Or even if there are those few who are there, the Vena like kings don't take advice from them. They actually make sure that they are set aside and they treat themselves as if they are God. So the sages decided that we need to finish off Vena. And they actually started saying loudly in anger, kill him, kill him. Such a sinful, most dreadful person he is. If he is left alive, he will ruin the whole planet, the whole society will be perished. He doesn't deserve to sit on the throne. He is insulting the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the cause of all opulence. Everybody, looks at him. Even the Devatas are meditating on the light which comes from his toenails, and look at this audacity of this sinful, wretched person that he is openly blaspheming and criticizing Lord Vishnu. The Bhagavatam says actually as soon as King Vena criticized the Supreme Lord, he was already as good as dead. Because the scriptures say that it is like suicide to criticize the Supreme Personality of God, because the Lord is the source of all happiness. He who becomes blasphemous of the Lord, even though immediately he may still be for some time able to maintain his situation, but very soon he will be depleted of all good fortune and achieve a very unfortunate situation. The sages decided to kill him. But how are the sages going to kill him? They did not use any weapons. They were not even carrying any weapons. It is said that the sages in unison, just by chanting a hunkar, they killed King Vena then and there. What is that hunkar? They made some kind of a sound. And they somehow directed that sound towards King Vena. And all these sages did that together, and that intensity of that vibration killed King Vena. So Prabhupada says that the sages were so powerful. Just by their sound, they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to take weapons. They didn't even have to curse with their sounds. So such power those sages had. And after they finished him off, the sages, said, "Okay, now, they went back to their hermitages." Sunita, the mother of King Vena, was actually so sad that this had happened. And she was so attached to Vena, even though he was so sinful, that she refused to cremate the body of King Vena. Instead, she decided to preserve his body. And what she did, using certain preservative herbs and through certain chanting of certain mantras, she kept the body and preserved the body. So some time passed after this happened. Of course, again now, what was the situation? The kingdom was again in a situation where no king. So no king means again the rogues, all who were hiding, the rats, fearing Vena. Because Vena was not actually a king, he was like the mafia don. So all the small gundas and rogues were afraid of him. Correct. So there are so many Galika Gunda, and then there is one mafia don. So the Galika Gunda are scared of the mafia. So now this mafia is taken care of. He's finished. So all the Gundas are out. So they started creating chaos, and again the kingdom was being harassed. So one day the sages, after taking their bath, and they were staying along the bank of Saraswati. Most of the great sages in the days of yore would stay on the banks of Saraswati river. Even my own ancestors who were sages were also staying on the banks of the Saraswati river. So they, after performing their bath and performing the yajna sacrifice, they started discussing. Of course, they were first doing Harikatha. And after discussing Harikatha, they started also discussing what all is going on in the kingdom, various kinds of disturbances. They again started reflecting that, the king is gone and now this is such a mess. Because the rogues and thieves are creating so much disturbance. As they were discussing like this, there was a big dust storm everywhere. What was that dust storm? That dust storm was the dust which was created by the havoc of the rogues and the thieves who were running around and looting people. And they were like, oh, this is so bad. Without a government, a strong government, there is no proper law and order. And the citizens cannot live peacefully. Because even if they earn well, they are so worried somebody will come and steal it. They are so worried somebody will suddenly come and kill. Somebody will kidnap my wife, my daughter. Somebody will burn my house. It was such a situation of so much anxiety. Actually, the Brahmanas were powerful enough. They could have also, just like they killed King Vena, they could have killed the kings and the rogues. But they said, this is not the solution. It is not our duty as Brahmanas to go around killing all the rogues. That is the duty of the king. We need a proper king. You have to fix the problem. We cannot be going around, walking around and saying, whom, and killing the rogues. That is not the system that the Supreme Personality wants. That is not the job of a Brahmana. Go around punishing. That is the Kshatriya's duty. Our duty is to guide society. Otherwise, if we start doing like this and deviate from our own duties as Brahmanas, we will lose our spiritual Brahmanical power. We will become just like a water which is kept in a cracked water pot. The water pot is cracked, the water will just leak out. Like that, if we engage in activities which are not our duties, we will lose our spiritual potency. Because our spiritual potency is because of our tapa, our composure, our being peaceful, our being austere. We start going around killing. That time we had to do because of an extraordinary situation. This is not what typically Brahmanas do, but that was a special emergency. We cannot be going around doing this. We need a king. Now where to get a king? Again, back to square one. So they thought and thought, and they were discussing how to resolve the situation. And they thought that actually the line of Anga, King Anga, because coming from Dhruva, is actually such a wonderful line. The DNA and genetics is so wonderful. There's all great, powerful kings. Not only great, powerful kings, many of them were great devotees. Anga was a great devotee, Dhruva was a great devotee, and so many others were great devotees. So actually, the DNA material of this particular seminal line is actually very good. This Vena was a aberration because of his background from Sunita. But we need a child who's still from that DNA. But how to get that child now? So they were thinking and they came up with a wonderful technology. And this is perhaps the original cloning technology or something of that sort, which was done back in those days by the sages. So what did they do? Went to Mother Sunita and said, we want to create somebody to rule now in King Vena's absence. So we want to do certain biological activities on the body of King Vena so that we can produce a child from him, because right now, he did not have any children when he died. So we'll produce a child from him without the help of a female. We have special understanding of the technology of how we can do. So what they did, it is said that the sages used the thigh of the body of King Vena, the dead body which was preserved by Sunita, and they churned it with great force according to some specific method. Now, of course, the Bhagavatam is not a book on technology of how they did, so the details of that is not given. So don't ask me for further details on how to do this, Prabhu. I want, also to clone and do so many things. So I do not know the technology. It went up along with the sages. But they did that successfully. And after that churning, the Bhagavatam says a dwarf-like person was created from the body of King Vena. Very interesting. And the name of this dwarf-like person was Bahuka. But there was a problem with him. First, he had a dwarf-like body. He was black like a crow, Bhagavatam says. And his body was actually quite deformed. Deformed in the sense, his limbs were very short. His jaw was very large. His legs, arms were very short. His nose was flat. His eyes were reddish and coppery. His hair was copper colored. He looked really scary, Bahuka. But he was very submissive and meek. And after he was born, he told the sages, "Oh, sir, what should I do?" So they told him, Nishida. Nishida means, please sit down. So from that instruction of Nishida, that particular child, whose official name was Bahuka, he became the father of the Nishada race. So what we hear is Nishada. Nishad is a race of people who are particularly prone to sinful activities. And the Bhagavatam says that this Bahuka, who was also Nishada, he took in his own body all the sinful reactions of King Vena. And because he took all the sinful reactions of King Vena and then he produced generations from him, all his generations also were engaged in sinful activity. And that is why the Nishadas are said to be generally sinful in their behavior. And that is why it is said these Nishadas are allowed generally in olden times only to live in hills and forests because they are always addicted to sin. So with that, we actually come to the end of the 14th chapter. Sorry to not conclude the suspense, but we are not ended with the story, because this was not the output that the sages wanted. The sages' output was to get a king. This Bahuka was not the king that they were hoping for. So the story continues, and that goes into chapter 15, and we will discuss chapter 15 the following class, and how this led eventually to the appearance of the great Prithu Maharaj, an empowered incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we discussed that. It's a very beautiful pastime. This is, we'll conclude today with this. So thank you very much for patiently listening this wonderful katha from the Bhagavat. So before opening up the floor, I'd like to thank Rasamrit Prabhu. Would you like to speak something? Any thoughts, any realizations that you would like to add? What we discussed? And then we will open up the floor if anybody has any additional questions or comments. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. So nothing to add anything, but I'm very happy to listen to you, Prabhu. And it is my great good fortune that it just happened by chance. So I'm sure devotees would be knowing. And if you don't know, it was Gaurchandra Prabhu's birthday yesterday. So yesterday I couldn't call him, but I just wanted to personally call him and wish him. Because we are actually now living in a digital world. So I thought, let me personally call and wish him. He's a very, close friend. So then he said that within 3 minutes, I have a class to take. And then I said, if it is possible, then I would also join, because we should hear, even when we go to pilgrimage, the most important activity one should do is to hear the sadhus, rather than just obviously going around and taking darshan and bathing in the holy dham is purifying, but more purifying is bathing in the words of the sadhus, so that is very, very nice. And I'm so happy, Prabhu, that you so very nicely, wonderfully summarized the whole chapter, step by step, very, very nicely, and also gave your own realization of all these years, particularly about the government I was thinking. And also when you spoke about how the seed and the soil both are important, and taking care of the sapling is very, very important. We need to protect it and nourish it very nicely, and seed grows in the soil of the mother. So very nicely you connected, giving that how Vena actually became like although the seed was of the superior quality, but somehow or other, he still became notorious child. So household life is successful when both husband and wife are Krishna consciousness. And very nicely you said that raising a child into Krishna consciousness is a great and very sacred service to the Lord. And I really liked, and I actually remembered at that time one sentence told by His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, who would quite often come here actually. And he told once that kids, they have small ears and big eyes. So they listen little, and they observe more. So basically they see what we do. So if we want to really present before them, then we need to follow the same thing, and then children will take it over. And also your realization about government, proper government, how it is important for decision making was very nice. And also you said that leadership position, sometimes people want to become leader, but there is a danger. It's a very precarious situation, because something goes bad, as you said, something goes wrong, then everybody will blame. And leadership is actually taking responsibility and taking accountability. And 1/6 karma of the citizen obviously goes to the leader. So it's not a very, meaning good situation. Sometimes some people become leader out of compulsion, but sometimes it is very dangerous to go and become leader. I remember one time Gaurang Prabhu said about this. He said that somebody asked question that, Prabhuji, how to become humble? And he said, please come and join management. When you come in the management, you will become humble. And then somebody said, Prabhuji, how to become most humble? He said, become temple president, become the yatra leader, then you will be naturally humble. So anyway, it was very nice. And just last one point, Prabhuji, obviously I'm just repeating what you spoke. I don't have my own realization. But you said that when don't do any conversation when both the parties are heated up. So here the sages went when they wanted to know the mood of the Vena. So it is also very nice. Sometimes, if the mood is bad, so whether it's within the family or within the society of the devotees, we should not actually, do argument, but we should take proper understanding and then proceed it. So it was very nice, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. And all the devotees are very, I would say fortunate to have you as their, guide and mentor. And it was very nice to hear you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. And once again, wishing you a very happy Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, by the way, somebody spilled the news in the group, so many of them already wished me.
Okay.
So of course, I always welcome, good wishes, blessings, prayers. We all need, and in such things there is no other consideration. So I'm so happy to receive all of their love and affection, and also from my god brothers and others. So thank you very much. I just want to share one thing, that it is so amazing how attentively His Grace Rasamrit Prabhu heard the class. See, he has recounted so many of these points. So this is what is meant by attend. He just casually came in to listen to the class. Actually, he doesn't need to listen to my class. Just came. I didn't want to. It was embarrassing for me, but I didn't want to say no, because we should not say no. So he has come, but so attentively he is able to recollect. So this is a very important thing. So when we come to a class, we should come to a class with the intention to hear and learn. This is not just entertainment, because if we simply do entertainment, yes, there will still be some purification, because Krishna Katha is purifying in all situations. But we can get so much more benefit if we are tuned in and we take every bit of whatever. So I'm very amazed how Prabhu could recollect so many of the things that I shared. So that is encouraging, Prabhu. That's my learning for the day. Thank you, Rasamrit Prabhu, for your amazing example. And Prabhu is doing immense service. He gives many classes, and he's doing huge amount of service, and he's loved by so many devotees. So, by the way, both his son Gaurang and my son Ram are also in the same class, though in different places. They are both giving their exams. So also we were. By the way, it is Ram's birthday today, so I will request all of you to give your blessings to Ram. So yeah, and again, I want to emphasize Prabhu's both children, Gauranga. What is the daughter's name, Prabhu? I forgot. Kishori. Yeah, Gaurang and Kishori, both. Their whole family is also very Krishna conscious. They are together very nicely practicing Krishna consciousness. So I always strongly feel that the real success of a Grihastha life is, to display that example. Of course, sometimes in spite of best efforts, like we discussed in today's story, things may not always work to plan, but we should try our best so that at least there is no lapse on our side to produce that result, because we need to have the future generations, grow up in Krishna consciousness, because the potency of those who have grown up in Krishna consciousness is so much more. And that is the point. So that is the success of the Grihastha ashram. So that's another important point. So thank you all, everyone. Anybody else? Rasamrit, thank you again. Anybody else has any questions or comments?
No question, Prabhuji, but you updated in the group that you are going to explain about the deities.
Yeah, I was going to, but it's already 10:15. Why don't we discuss on Wednesday? I think I want to speak a little bit, otherwise it'll be too rush. Is that okay? I have not forgotten. Yes. But let us do. We have the good fortune of Rasamrit Prabhu's association today, so we can discuss on Wednesday.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Please remind me again on Wednesday. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add or ask? So I hope you are studying along and reading along. we are doing only an overview. So please read the Bhagavatam and scrutinizingly study the purports so that we can actually enjoy that nectar. So much wonderful nectar. Okay, thank you. Then I will wrap up for tonight. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaved Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Hari Bol. Thank you.
So Prabhuji,
Bol.
tomorrow we have a
Hare
class.
Krishna.
I was actually thinking about it. Just give me some time. I'll update you on the WhatsApp group about the Sadachar, whether we'll discuss tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. No problem.
Yeah. I just need to check my calendar. But I intend to do, but let me check my calendar again. Because I
Sure,
have
Prabhuji.
something, but I will check and I will come.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Amit,
Krishna,
Haribol.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the class.
Haribol. Thank you, Anita Mat.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Ashwin, how are you?
Fine, thank you,
I can't
Prabhu.
see your smiling face. Your face.
Happy
Oh,
belated
yes,
birthday to you.
Haribol. Huh?
Happy belated birthday to you.
Happy belated birthday to me. Thank you so much for your good wishes. Seem to see you all. Where's your mother?
She is here.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribol. Ji, how are you?
I'm fine, Prabhuji. How are you?
I am well. I'm missing all of you.
Good to see you.